Well, good morning. Hello, world. Thank you for joining us at the Two Grumpy Old Men podcast. My name is Rich Garling, and the other grumpy old man is.
Hi, my name is Tim Bagwell.
And Tim, what are we talking about today?
Rich, we're talking, I think, about a couple things. One of them is, of course, on everyone's mind, I think, is the big, beautiful bill. And because it's on everyone's mind, we'll link it to some other things that have been happening instead of just focusing on the big, beautiful bill because it hasn't passed yet and the body count is yet to be made, I guess.
Yeah, well, I prefer to call it the big bad bill.
Yeah, the big, bad bill.
and, and so, what are we linking it to?
Oh, the where we're linking it to the election in New York of the mayoral nominee of the Democratic Party by ranking Zoran Mandani and self-described Democratic Socialist, yay, and then also in a related though not yet not yet an election or a primary is in your area, the Illinois Ninth, where Kat Abuzela has surged forward in the polls. She's a social media influencer and journalist, and she has declared for the seat. And she's 26 years old, quite dynamic, and also a self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist. So, going back to Mandani, excuse me, is the issue that he brings to the plate. These issues that are the bread and butter issues of the average working person, which the big killer bill
Yeah,
seems the
really.
Republican killer bill seems designed to harm that same population. You know, the battle lines are somewhat drawn. The electoral battle lines are drawn between the Republicans and the Democrats, or the Democratic Socialists. I think the Democratic Socialists are frustrated with the bringing on the party. The party's moderates, if you will, seem to stand. Because let's face it, in this era, what is a moderate except a collaborator with the Republican right? You know, to me.
As some people would think, yes, possibly.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
some
And
people might also take it though that a moderate, while wanting a lot of progressive uh, uh, planks passed, also realize that it's going to take some doing to get it done. You just can't
yeah,
slam it down people's throats because people don't accept that, and that you have to.
well,
I think what we lack here in a lot of cases in politics is the art of compromise.
well, certainly that's all gone because the right has moved so far to the right that there is no.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, although we'll see again, the body count is not in from the big bag bill this morning. You know, there might be some compromise, but they seem just dedicated to cutting the essential working class uh, benefits of
Oh,
Medicare, food support.
yeah. Did you notice that a lot of the disagreement, with the big bad bill, especially with the Republicans, seems to be over the fact that they don't think we're cutting enough, that they're all of a sudden so worried about the deficit, and but in the meantime still willing to give a huge tax cut, to the uber
Well,
wealthy out there.
yes, yes, yeah. So it's a so we have that. So we have the moderates in Congress who dominate on the Democratic side, but there is a cluster of progressives of Democratic socialists in Congress that have been pressing on a number of issues, and then we have them emerging throughout, mostly among younger candidates, impressively younger candidates. Mandami at 33 and Kat Abugazela at 26. Quite impressive. You know, I think I was 40 something when I ran, 45 when I ran for Congress, and uh, it's it's good to see. I think though, in my grumpy old man, oh wait a minute, we were talking about this. Uh, in 2004 when I ran, there were nine other candidates, Democratic candidate challengers of Republican incumbents, and there were no other Democratic primaries. There was not going to be a Democratic primary. It was this, you know, we were the candidates, and the Illinois Party at that time, the Democratic, not just the party, but the supporters of the Democratic Party in Illinois, did nothing for those nine candidates. essentially nothing. Our average fundraising was around $75,000 after the when it was all told. Whereas in other states with Democratic challengers, the average was 200 and some thousand.
Oh, Cat Abasguela has already apparently raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $325,000.
Exactly. Yeah.
Apparently she did better than Shankowski, whose seat she's gonna wants to take.
Yeah.
And that
Well, Schakowsky is retiring. Schakowsky is
right.
retiring.
But this is before Shankowski announced her retirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Abasguela comes into the picture and says she's going to run against her in the primary, and raises more than Shankowski does. So it might be that's what I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're the sitting congressperson and you look at that and you're going, wait a minute, she's raising a lot of money there.
Although
Maybe it's time for me to retire.
Schakowsky probably has more money in the bank in the campaign bank than
Yeah,
than,
yeah,
than
but
what
still,
she did.
that's a telling sign, and
Well,
when you raise that
and
much
the
money
fact
that quickly.
and that federal finance laws allows her to take that money and walk away and be a player with her the money that she raised prior.
Um, yeah, and then I think and I'm not, I know that with Illinois law now, it used to be that whatever money an office holder raised, and that they could literally take that money and do whatever they wanted to with it. Now they can't necessarily do that. Or at least they can't use it for personal use.
Well, I think
They,
I think the state candidates. I think the federal candidates. I think are still. I have to double check that, but I think the federal candidates can still walk away with the money. And
uh,
yeah, yeah, it
nice
sucks.
for them.
Yeah, yeah,
That seems a little. Yeah, no, I don't care for that idea
yeah.
too much.
One of the many benefits of being out there.
By
But
the
I
way,
think what? Go ahead.
just so people are aware, there's apparently 11 other candidates
Yeah.
for Tchaikovsky's seat.
Well,
This, you know,
an open seat, and where the Democratic primary victor is going to be the congressman.
right,
That's the beauty
right.
of that.
It's definitely a
Already
blue district,
in a blue
but
same
it's
way. Well, and that's the beauty of at least what we have as Democrats is that we know that that's the process. Whereas the Republicans could be a good Republican individual, and MAGA's going to be in there to put somebody against him. You know,
yep,
now
yep.
this MAGA hammer they keep on trying to use. Although I think it's becoming eventually it will be a toy hammer made out of plastic.
Yeah, because it would be interesting to take a look at to see how effective are Trump's coattails. I mean, I know he's got people scared, okay, obviously, but how effective have they actually been? Because I know he has not won all of the elections. The people that he has endorsed have not won all the elections that they've been in. So just how effective are his coattails?
Well, and the
And that,
problem, the rock and hard place that these guys are, am I going to be challenged by a some MAGA recruit, or is the Democrat just going to whip my butt because we took so much money from poor people, from working class
oh,
people?
yeah. One can only if they pass this bill, the big bad bill. As much as I would hate to say it, but well, let's put it this way: the impact, the economic impact of this bill probably really won't hit until about roughly August, September of 2026,
Right,
which would
right.
be not bad timing because, a lot of times most people don't pay attention to the election cycle until about
Uh-huh.
that time. And so they're only looking at like the last 3 months, to decide, to make a decision as to who they're going to vote for. So if the economy's taking a dive and everybody's being hit personally, because of it, then yeah, the Republicans should take a hell of a hit.
Well, fortunately, Trump has provided, additional help for the Democratic Party, and that's that we're approaching a two-quarter recession. We're approaching poor performance for 2 quarters, which will qualify to be called a recession.
Hmm.
And the recession, should it happen, looks like we're headed that way. I love seeing Maria how do you say her last name, Balsamo on Fox. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, she was
yeah.
expected to C 90,000.
Bartolomeo, isn't it? Or I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah,
how you
yeah,
pronounce?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
She,
And
she
she was
used to be worth watching.
ADP jobs report of 95,000, and it was a negative 33,000, and she was just kind of stunned by the numbers, and they're so yeah, that we're approaching 2 quarters of low growth that qualify as a recession. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but we'll be in a recession soon enough. And I don't know how Trump can possibly, with all of his other activities, pull us out of it. He'll probably dig it deeper for reasons I can't understand. But except, maybe, well, I'm not going to delve into this conspiracy theories here. But back to our two candidates, though. So in balance, here's the thing: is that, but the techniques don't apply in a lot of Republican districts because they're rural, and it's hard to get to those people. It's hard to get to those people, and like you said, it's going to be 2026 before they start to realize that the hospital is closed and they need that hospital. There's a lot of things that won't be happening in time enough. Of course, then there is the possibility that every Republican will say something stupid that gets to be a clip in an ad.
Oh, you mean like a Joni Ernst?
And like Joni Ernst, or what was the latest one? There was one that yesterday, or even this morning, that the Republican was saying something. Well,
Asinine.
McConnell's not running again, right? So that's an open seat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he said something stupid. They'll get used to not having Medicaid.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, we just won't buy an extra doll for the kid, kind of thing.
Exactly. That'll cover the cancer removal surgery. Yeah, that'll take care of the radiation treatment.
Well,
So
and
yeah,
one thing, yep, and one thing you notice too with the big bad bill is that they're really dependent upon trickle down economics.
yeah,
They just can't seem to let go of that, even though it has never worked.
yeah, yeah.
It's just amazing, and I'm just surprised, that people still, that these
Well,
people are accepting this.
information, if you think about it, because they're along the lines of what you're saying. There's a recession for every Republican president.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And every
Yeah,
Democratic president has to dig their way out of their mess,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
And the people, some people, the people, especially in the rural areas, don't get the message. They don't get, the information they need to understand. They're caught in a sort of a information void, I guess, would be that they don't get the information or they get the wrong information from the wrong sources about they want to remain connected to the local Republican elites or something like that. And as the Caroline Levitt, he's a businessman, and he knows what he's doing, and it's like, to me,
Yeah,
that's
really?
almost like, he's a businessman. He knows nothing about what he's doing in terms of running a government. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's take a look at the guy's business. I mean, okay, Trump, supposed businessman. Okay, guy's made billions of dollars and all this, but have you actually taken a look at how he's done all of that? I mean, my God, the man's, how many times has he gone bankrupt? Several that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Okay, and in particular, one being a casino. And it's like, how the hell does a casino go bankrupt?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
how does that
Yeah.
happen? And so, any candidate out there is sitting there saying they're a businessman, and thus that's what qualifies them to run government. Well, okay, tell me about your business. Let me see what you've done. How have you actually run this business?
Mm-hmm.
And all that, because they always seem to forget, and I think this is why Trump favors being a dictator, an autocrat, and all this, because usually there's one guy on the top and he's just shouting out orders, and everybody else just follows, or does exactly what they're told because they're paid to do
Yeah.
what they're told. Whereas here in America, we've got how many people in this country? 350 million, roughly, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay, and that means you basically have 350 million bosses. Okay, because that's what each and every one of us as citizens are, and our power is that vote.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I fear the most that these guys are going to try to take away is our power to vote. I mean, they're whittling away at it with each and every
Yes.
law. There was
Yeah.
one law that Cat, by the way, she goes by Cat Abu as her handle, apparently. But there was one law, and I looked it up, and it's, hang on a second, it's the SAVE Act, and
Oh yeah.
yes, and that
Yeah.
because I
Save
asked.
women from voting, I think is the.
Yeah, it's called the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility or SAVE Act.
Hmm?
Now, it was formerly, according to my notes here, was formerly H.R. 8281 and was passed by the House of Representatives this back in July of 2024. And it requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. Okay, and here's the interesting thing says that for proof of citizenship, um, it says the states could not register voters in federal elections unless the applicant provided documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. For example, a passport. Okay.
Mhm. Got one of
Birth
those.
certificate.
Got
Okay.
one of those.
Other approved documents. Okay. Now I'm looking at this and I'm going, huh, this is interesting. So I turned around and mind you, I use this AI tool, and so I asked the question of, well, okay, you're saying that if I show you my license and say I'm just that I'm a woman who got married, say a couple years ago, and changed her last name, and so her license shows her married name, but her birth certificate shows her maiden name. The two don't match. Now all of a
Yep.
sudden you can't use a birth certificate. Okay, so what do you use? Well, the law doesn't say what to use. Okay, now they're up for grabs. What do
Yep.
they do? Again, it's a solution looking for a problem.
Well, and and enough polling stations equals eventually violence, which because you can't just keep turning people away, saying sorry, dear, but shouldn't have changed your name, or maybe you should, the
Yeah,
recrimination, the
yeah,
impact of it is just anger upon the part of the voters, and then of course violence means state authority coming in, you know, you know, there's talk, rumors, and this is conspiratorial, of course, of canceling elections, but certainly he has moved towards all kinds of directions to limit our ability to vote, and one of those ways would be just don't have the elections. Now, to that, there is some administrative problems because the states do manage the federal election, the House and Senate seats. They only the House and Senate seats and the electors that get sent to Washington, which is where they jimmied things around with the last time.
hmm
Right? They tried to jimmy the electors and tried to jimmy the vote a little bit,
Well, the
but
electoral
especially the
college is a
electors.
technicality.
Yeah. So it's at the federal. That's the power at the federal level, and so they're trying to push that power more down, which is very difficult to administer. How are you going to have everybody, because every poll worker who's older than us, for the most part,
Well, some,
uh,
some.
is going to be asking. Is going to be asking the supervisor there, what about this? What
Yeah,
Yeah, they're going to
right.
be asking, does this qualify?
Right.
I know her. She's my next door neighbor. Doesn't
Yeah,
this qualify? There's
yeah,
all those
yeah.
questions.
Well,
And
yeah,
how
and
do you
then you
do
get
that? How do you handle that? And this is the whole thing: is that they think they can administer things that are beyond the scope. The reason we have certain kinds of policies is that it's easier to it's e- it's easier to have a single payer health system than to have multiple insurance companies messing with us. You know.
right, right,
Right, right,
right.
right. So, but we've tolerated something like that, and this is not the type. This is the type of thing that local people get to use to intimidate. Local Republicans can use to intimidate local Democrats.
Right.
That's the idea. That's
Yeah.
the idea. Yeah.
And to go back on a little bit on what you just, what ends up happening is that you produce long lines at the polling places. People get frustrated with that, and they walk away,
Right.
and not realizing that the process has been purposely made tougher,
Mm-hmm.
okay, by the Republicans, so that just what I just said happens. People get frustrated with it, they turn around and they walk away. All right, and
Mm-hmm.
that's their hope. My To me, it's like I would encourage people, no, you stay in line, because once you're in line, they have to let you vote. Pure and simple. The courts have decided that many times, over and over. And the thing with single payer systems for insurance, by the way, I like to remind people of the mere fact that they always argue, well, we don't want some unnamed bureaucrat, from Washington D.C. deciding, if I'm going to be able to get a shot or not. Well, what's the difference between that and some unnamed, administrator in an insurance company doing the same thing?
Well, the difference is this: the one in Washington is not getting paid based on their review. Yeah. Okay.
So what we were talking about was, them trying to, muck up the ability for people to vote, by making it so, you have to come out with a basically outrageous identification requirements, and it slows the process down at the polling booths. The polling place, and it just makes things tougher. And that,
Well, these are tools that especially local yokels, excuse me, can use. I can tell you of a case I was involved in, not a case, but a situation that I was called in to help with in a Democratic county in Illinois, where petitions were being circulated, and people would sign their name, and they would they would sign, print, and then put their address. Okay, and the it was being circulated for a county-wide position. Okay,
hmm
yet they still challenged the petition because the person address that they challenged that signature because the address didn't match the voter record. And it's like, but they're still in the county, and it's a county-wide office. Yet they scratched that, and I don't know if it invalidated the entire. And, in some states they invalidate the entire petition, but it's a similar situation of ballot qualifications. Who gets on the ballot is also determined by these, signatures.
Right.
The signature, yeah,
Yeah.
they apply that to the signature, and then they limit. They're scrutinized.
Yeah.
In Missouri, the petitions all go to the state for review. As you know,
Oh,
in
really?
Illinois,
Oh,
yeah, in Illinois,
it's the county.
it was, and the rule is that someone has to. Well, I think it's the rule in Illinois too. Someone has to be in possession of the petition, and I saw many events where the clipboards with the petitions on it would sit on the back table, and people would come up and sign them.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. No, no. Having passed out, of course, many petitions myself, and I've also contested many a petition.
Yes.
And all that. I always look at it this way, Tim. It's not rocket science, for crying out loud. And
No.
if you can't sit there and get a simple petition filled out and a statement of candidacy and a statement of economic interest all filled out, the whole packet, for getting your name on the ballot. If you can't get that filled out, what makes you think that you can be a trustee on the village board?
Right.
I'm
Well,
I'm sorry, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this
you know,
stuff out.
trustee one. I have one from Springfield where the it was the convention center board in Springfield, and the Republicans produced signatures of people who lived outside the convention center district.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
Sorry,
I know,
sorry.
I know. I mean,
They only needed 30 signatures.
yeah,
It looks like they passed it around at a meeting, not checking in to see if they lived in the right precinct.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I know. I've seen, Tim. I've literally seen petitions that came through, and one of the instructions that you get with the petitions is that it has to be done in black ink. Not so
Yeah.
difficult to understand. You get yourself a black pen. We got plenty of them around, okay, and all this. But what do these bozos do? They sit there and they get the signatures done in pencil. And it's funny too because they'll do it in pencil, and then for some oddball reason they decided to erase it and redo it. I mean, it shows it. You're looking at this going, really? you know, and so I had one, and this is an important one too, that I objected to, in which two of the candidates, they were running for village board, and two of the candidates basically hadn't paid their garbage bill, nor had they paid their water bill, nor had they paid for the sticker, the vehicle sticker for their car for at least 5 years. So here it is. I find this information out. Now, one of the reasons I found it out was because I was on the village board. Okay, and we get a report of who's past due on all their bills. It's just part of the packet that village board members get because we're trying to run the budget for the village and these past dues, impact how we're going to be able to supply services to people. And it's basically unfair to everybody else who diligently and dutifully paid their bill.
Right.
But these guys decided, oh, no, we don't have to do that. But they think they can run for office. And part of the problem with that is that there's an ethics issue there. And there's also a state law that basically says that if you owe money to the entity for which you wish to run for office and hold an office to it, you can't do it. It's not allowed. And you know why it's not allowed? Because you could vote away your debt once you're in office. That's like, duh. That's so hard.
Right,
so what did these guys do? They decided that, and once they heard that I was objecting to their candidacy and all this, and they realized the objections that I was going to come up with, because you have to tell them this, all right, that they went over and they paid their bill. And so they thought they're all good and clear. Only the law states that you have to have had the bill paid up before you submit the papers for running for office.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And so they were all upset about that. They were not happy with me.
What makes them think they run for office when they have slipshod or devious, business practices, personal business practices?
Yeah.
I actually don't understand how we don't have water bills here in St. Louis because.
But you don't have water?
No, but we have we don't have metered service, so we don't get we have so and other bills would be certain things would be turned off at a certain point. 5 years is a long time.
Yes.
Not to have
Yes.
I think we're up here. But back to our so it's great that we have great social media candidates coming forward, great young candidates coming forward. I hope they understand that the same rules, what they have engineered, can't exactly be done to take over Congress entirely. You can't use social media in every Republican district, or have the social media presence of a candidate, because it takes some skill to do the social media thing, and to be able to be on the ground, because on the ground you get content. That's one of the big things about the social media presence is that they have the media presence here, but they're also be able to create content. Mondami produced a lot of content from walking around.
Yeah. Just talking with people, doing door to door.
And she's produced a lot and Kat has produced a lot with events in particular.
Yeah.
I'm not sure with events and sometimes her own and sometimes others, but she does it with that, and that produces the kind of content and information out to the voter. But in a district that's half the size, that is the size of many states.
Now,
downstate in a lot of rural regions, it's just almost impossible. It's still hard to overcome.
Yes. Now, just so people know that we're even though we've been talking about Abisgaila quite a bit, just so folks know, we don't endorse any particular candidate at the moment. We're just talking about what's going on in a particular congressional district. And just so you know, there's a guy named David Abriva, Bushra Amawala, Daniel Biss, Laura Fine, Miracle Jenkins, Bethany Johnson, Lauren Million, and Howard Rosenblum are all also running for this particular congressional seat. Schakowsky has been in this seat since 1998, I guess, or 1999, and she's really never had anybody run against her. She's just been one of those people that everybody loves her, and she's been able to stay in office. Once somebody like that retires, though, everything's wide open. And so that's what's happening with her. There's also two, call them Republicans, yeah, Rockio Cleveland and Mark Sue. Don't know either one of them. Never heard of them. Never heard of them. And the vast majority of the Democratic candidates here, I mean, Daniel Biss. I know Daniel Biss. He was a state senator at one time. And he's been the mayor of Evanston for a number of years. Laura Fine is a state senator representing the, surprisingly, the 9th District, which is Illinois' 9th District, not congressional.
I visited Jan Schakowsky's office in 2004 and to raise money, which didn't happen. But what was impressive, it wasn't just about her, but the state rep's office was there, the state senate office was there, and her office, all in a row. Okay.
Wow.
All the big office.
Well, that's actually pretty handy, really.
Yeah, one-stop shop. But I have this grant. Can you sign off on it?
yeah. And then, or hey, you got a problem, and you went to your state representative, and they're not able to. They're like, oh, well, wait a minute. Maybe we can get help from our state senator or from our congressional district. But I think we're just about out of time here, Tim. So
yeah, I think so. We covered a lot of topics.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm the closer.
Yes, you are.
we're very we need to talk to staff about that.
Yes, and our cameraman, God only knows where he's at.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The sound guy was really out of whack.
Just in case folks haven't noticed, this is pretty much run by the two people you're looking at.
It was about 250 miles apart. That wraps it up for the two Grumpy Old Men podcasts on the eve of Independence Day. I am Tim Bagwell.
And I'm Rich Carling.
For both of us, remember that we all have a role to play in saving our democracy. More to come.
Arg.